Yo, what's up? It's Stewart, and today we are talking about how to write foreshadowing into your story. So to be able to write foreshadowing efficiently in your story, you need to know the 6 basic structure points of a novel. First, you have normalcy, which is how your story begins, the normal life-to-life, day-to-day life of your character in your world. Second, you have the inciting incident, which is basically what starts the actual plot of the story in a sense. Something happens, something interrupts your character's normal day-to-day life. Then you have the rising action, which this is usually the entirety of the middle of your book, or at least the first half of the middle, in a sense. It's actually your character going and doing whatever it is. In my story, Battle for Medagore, this is the actual war that is being taken place. After that, you have the climax, which is the high point. This is where everything hits the fan and it's settled in a sense. Your character achieves whatever or doesn't achieve it, depending what kind of story you're writing. This is the ending of the war for my book. This is, you're accomplishing something in your story. Then you have the falling action, which is kind of tying up all the loose ends. This usually happens after the climax, but it kind of ties off everything, everything that you had set up open throughout the story, all these, rabbit trails you kind of wrote. You're tying them all up, so it's not the actual rabbit trail, or it's not a loose end. Unless it's a series, then it can be. But this is the portion of your book that you are actually completing everything, finalizing it. Then you have the resolution, which is basically the happily ever after, or everybody died or whatever. This is the actual ending. This is what is the new normalcy in a sense. So when you go to write a sequel, the resolution is basically the normalcy for that one. This is how your story ends, how it's left the day-to-day life of your characters now on, Now in each of these structure points of your story is an opportunity to foreshadow. You can foreshadow from the very beginning of your normalcy of something that is going to happen later on. One story I've read very recently is The Savior's Champion from Jenna Marassi, and the opening chapter is just Tobias. It starts out with him laboring in the fields, and then kind of that's the opening scene. Basically, he's harvesting some I think sugar cane or something, and while he's doing that, how it's described with him, harvesting it and chopping it down with a sickle, how they're falling like dead bodies. It's something very simple, and people know what it means. They're just kind of falling over on top of each other into piles and stuff, lifelessly in a sense. But that kind of sets the mood and kind of lets you know something, darker. There's going to be death in this book. It's just subtleties like that. And that started in the very first scene. Probably, I can't even remember, probably within the first paragraph or two of the book. There's already that little bit of foreshadowing there. And the inciting incident or the rising action, you can kind of foreshadow more of maybe how the climax is actually going to be. You don't want to tell the readers exactly what's going to happen or how it's going to be resolved, or it could even be hinting at what the resolution is, before the climax has ever been partaked in a sense. Your characters could be talking about something that could be foreshadowing how their life is going to change and how life is going to be after everything in that resolution stage of your story. And sometimes it's just easier to look at your story in these 6 structure points to better understand foreshadowing and exactly how you can incorporate it from one point to another. So now that I've kind of described the 6, structure points in your novel, your book, your short story, your whatever, to better understand foreshadowing, what is it exactly? It is you hinting at things, or your characters hinting at it, either through dialogue, action, it could just be a narrative, that something is going to happen later on. It is something being told to the reader saying, hey, this is important, remember this later. But you don't want it to be blatant. You don't want to really throw the reader out of their mood as they're reading. You don't want it to be like, hey, look at me now, you gotta remember this. But you want it to be subtle. You want it to be very woven into your story so that maybe even the readers don't even know that you're foreshadowing at that point. But later in the story, whenever it kind of folds back to it, they're like, oh, I remember that now. And then if they do decide to read it a second time, they will pick up on it better that way. They're like, oh yeah, I didn't even notice that the first time. That's how you want it written. Foreshadowing is kind of like a forewarning to your reader. It kind of builds that suspense if they do pick up on it. But like I say, you want it subtle enough not to really say exactly what it is, because that's not foreshadowing. Foreshadowing, there's still that mystery. But you're warning the reader in a sense. You're letting them know there is going to be something associated with this later on. And that is just, it builds the tension and the emotion of the reader as they are reading. I hear people all the time asking, when should I start foreshadowing in my book? Should it be in the middle? Should it be at the beginning? Should it be close to what the actual incident is so that the reader doesn't forget about it? And like I said earlier, you can foreshadow at any point in your story. You can do it from the very first sentence if you want. But you don't want it to be right next to whatever is actually going to come to fulfillment. But you can start it whenever. Just don't put it side by side, because the purpose of foreshadowing, like I said, is to build tension and to build emotion. And it would be kind of irrelevant to try to build that tension and emotion and then like a paragraph later, it's there, and they're like, well, I didn't really have to wait that long, and it's not really doing its part in a sense. You should scatter clues throughout the story and don't jumble them up. Make sure that they are serving a purpose, and make sure you're not overdoing it. You don't want it to be very blatant to the reader that you're saying, hey, this is important, but you do want it to be able to be picked up upon. And you don't want it to be overfilled with all of these foreshadowing, because that can just get very gimmicky in a sense. At times, if you overdo foreshadowing or you try to overly fill it with Easter eggs and this and that, the reader feels like they're being cheated, because that's all the context of the story is, and it comes off as a poorly written story. And make sure all your foreshadowing has a purpose. You don't want to foreshadow something very insignificant. Like I said, it would kind of become gimmicky if everything was being foreshadowed. So only foreshadow the important things, the plot twist, the climax, the resolution, all these major points in your story. Those can be foreshadowed, but any small irrelevant things do not need to be foreshadowed. And also remember Chekhov's gun. Anton Chekhov is a short story writer and a playwright who is credited for the literary technique known as Chekhov's gun. And it basically states that if your character hides a gun later, if the character puts a gun away, if a character loads a gun, if a character does whatever to a gun, at some point in the story, that character needs to shoot that gun. Or at least that gun needs to be relevant to the story. maybe they have to make a decision if they want to shoot that gun or not, you know. Even if it's very simple when it's first introduced, it could be just someone coming home from hunting or whatever, and the scene's sitting down cleaning the gun. More likely that scene is irrelevant. You could be doing dialogue, you could just mention that he had went hunting, but if you're actually showing the fact that he's got a gun and he's actually cleaning it, it should be important enough to be in the story. So therefore it should be foreshadowing the fact that later on that gun might be used again in some point. And that's kind of the concept. If you actually incorporate something like that, and that's just kind of the concept of that, make sure everything's got a purpose when you're foreshadowing. Oops. You don't want to just put it in there for minor insignificant things, and you don't want to have loose ends or rabbit trails when someone will be like, well, what was that gun for? Why did he do it? Especially if you have a character, you know, kind of stick a gun in a drawer, nothing else, the reader's going to keep on thinking, well, what about that gun? You know, what's going on with it? You need to wrap it up to make the reader feel like they're not being cheated out of something. And for me, whenever I do foreshadowing, a lot of it kind of comes second nature in a sense. As I'm writing, I am a plotter. I know exactly how the story is going to unfold. I've got everything kind of outlined, and I know the overall gist of the story, even if it's not detailed in the outline. I do very detailed outlines, but I do that on a chapter basis. So I do it just one chapter at a time, and I wait until this next chapter to actually outline that one. But I do have a very rough, broad outline of this series. But I know enough about it, and I've outlined enough. I know what's going to happen later on, so it just comes naturally, and I don't even have to really think about it as I'm writing, and foreshadowing just kind of comes out, whether it's in dialogue or something else like that. But for a lot of people, they struggle with foreshadowing, or, you know, if you're a pantser and you don't want to outline, you just rather write, it's kind of harder to actually foreshadow because you don't really know exactly where the story is going. But for those people who aren't good at it, or that, you know, just pants, save all your foreshadowing for your second draft. Get the story written so you know exactly what all is happening, and then kind of work your way backwards. It's like a reverse funnel of foreshadowing, in a sense, like a reverse outline. You look at it, look at your story, and you see the resolution, and you're like, okay, how can I foreshadow it? You know, do I want to? And if you do, okay, well, this is this, and then kind of work your way backwards, so you kind of scattering it out, and each time you're going back, just put a smaller amount of a hint there, so when you're reading forward, it's just building and building and building until there. So that kind of builds the tension, and then you go to the climax or the plot twist or whatever, and then you just kind of work your way backwards, and each time just kind of get a little bit smaller with the amount of information you want to present, like the Chekhov's gun. If you put a gun somewhere, you know, to use it later, if you didn't put that in there, but you have a character using a gun later, you might kind of put that in earlier. If you want, you can mention a gun like part way in it, and then at the beginning you could just have it that he's putting a unidentified object into something, so that little bit of mystery of exactly what kind of weapon or what kind of object it is, and then later you reveal it's a gun, and then later, you know, it's being used. So you're kind of building that tension by just giving them a little bit of information at a time. Now that I've talked about foreshadowing, I want to talk about the differences between foreshadowing, telegraphing, foreboding, and Easter eggs, because those four things are all completely different. Foreshadowing is, like I just mentioned, it is saying something or stating, indicating in your writing that something is going to happen later on, but you're not telling what's going to happen. You're just kind of hinting at it. You are just kind of putting these subtle clues here and there. Telegraphing is actually stating what you want. And I don't know any actual reason why you would want to telegraph anything. Now, foreboding, a lot of people try to associate foreshadowing and foreboding kind of together. Foreboding is more of a sense of emotion and tension, which is what foreshadowing can be used for. It really kind of grips the reader, but foreboding is more in the sense of a feel for the story. It can be a lot of hints and mystery surrounding different things, and it's kind of hinted at or kind of plugged in at, like foreshadowing, but there is no payoff later on. It is there simply just to build the emotion, which is, I don't want that getting confused with foreshadowing something that's irrelevant and not even coming to fulfillment, because that is just like having loose ends and stuff and rabbit trails. But foreboding is actually just kind of giving you enough mystery that's never really actually, revealed as to what it is or whatever, just to get the sense or the feel of the environment, of, the darkness, if you're around a dark story or whatever. I know I'm working on a side project that's got a lot of red herrings and some foreshadowing stuff, but it's got some foreboding in it, which it's really building the atmosphere of the world and the mystery and the darkness and the tension between the characters and the environment. And that's what foreboding is meant for. It's just to build that emotional connection to the environment, but not really have a payoff later. And then Easter eggs is not foreshadowing at all. I've heard a lot of people talk about foreshadowing Easter eggs together, which is kind of odd to me because it's nothing alike in a sense. Foreshadowing is, subtleties of hinting at something later. Well, Easter eggs, it's just what it is. There's nothing later on, it's just what is actually written. And it's more at hinting at different things. Sometimes it is hinting at different things in the story or in the series, or something else that this author has written before or whatever. It's something that the reader might not ever know about or ever, but oh, hey, that's this. But, it's still a little Easter egg for the people that do know that. And that's what an Easter egg is. It's just something that has relevance to the author or to the culture of their day and age, in a sense, whether it's other books or movies or whatever. It's kind of like a tip of the hat or a nod to, something else. But it's nothing that really has to be known by anybody. If it's written properly, a person who has no idea what it's even talking about can read the book and not feel like they're missing out on anything. It's not something that they read and be like, well, what are they referring to? What's that reference to? I don't get it. It should be written in a way that nobody will ever know unless they just do know, in a sense. If that makes any sense at all. That's what an Easter egg is. Yeah, that's how you effectively write foreshadowing into your story and be efficient with it. So if y'all got anything y'all would like to know about foreshadowing, Easter eggs, or telegraphing or foreboding or anything to do with writing in general that I haven't covered yet or that you're not completely clear about, just comment down below. I'll be happy to talk to y'all about it or make a video in the future about whatever. It doesn't matter. So let me know. I like communicating with y'all. Also, all my links are down below. If you haven't already, hit the subscribe and ring that little bell. Give it a thumbs up, thumbs down. I don't care. You do you, I do me. That's how I live my life, basically. But yeah, just hit me up on social media. Follow me, like me. I'm on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Pinterest. I get on Reddit ever so often to ask me anything. I got a website. I got a newsletter. I don't spam people with my newsletter. It's just, usually once a month thing, unless something major comes up or, exciting. I might do a second one for that month. But usually it's typically just once a month, and it just kind of keeps you up to date what I'm doing and, my plans for the next month, with videos like this or my blogs or whatever, or any events that I might be doing, which I haven't done any yet, but with the release of my new book coming up soon, those events should hopefully start kind of adding up. Hopefully not too much, because I'm a busy man, but I will be doing book signings and attending book conferences and stuff like that. So with that being said, my book will be out in May. I'm not going to say the date yet. Y'all will just have to wait. That will be released later, but May for sure. The book cover reveal, the cover reveal will be later this month. When? The 20th. March 20th. If you do subscribe to my newsletter, you will get an early peek at the cover. I think like a week before I'll be sending that newsletter out, or maybe just a few days before the actual reveal. Can't remember. If you subscribed to my newsletter previously, you would already know when you should be expecting that newsletter. But anyway, y'all will get it first if you're subscribed to my newsletter. So if you want to see it first, go check it out. As well as, always, I'm looking for ARC reviewers, street team members, and Release Day Blitz participants. Those links are down below. If y'all don't know what those are, you can just message me and let me know. Basically, ARC reviewer, you get a ebook copy before it's actually released, to be able to read it and return. Just leave a review once it is once it is released and out. Street team, just kind of help promote it, share some pictures and this and that, talk about it on your social media, kind of get other people to join in on the conversation. And Release Day Blitz is just basically like the street team, but just for the release day, where you just kind of really go crazy and try to promote the book on its release. So that's what that is. Like I said, if you need more, questions answered or whatever, just message me, email me, hit me up, whatever, comment below, and I will be more than happy to answer them. Yeah, that's about it. Everybody love everybody.